Hey, today I thought I'd do something just a little bit different and talk about what I feel was probably the best advice that I ever received as a worship leader. Um, I didn't really start singing in church or leading worship until I was like regularly until I was around 18 or so. I had led worship in youth group and then a little bit here and there growing up, but nothing that was ever like, hey, here's how you do it. Here's how you pick your songs. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. It was more just, I could sing and play guitar, and there was a need at times, so I just did it. And so even down to singing, I would always kind of just do whatever came naturally. Belt out the high notes, add a little vocal flair here and there, whatever the case. Like I said, so I didn't have any training, so I just did what felt natural. And after my wife and I were together, maybe a year or so, um, I was guest leading at a church, and after the first service, one of the worship team members came up and was just like, "Hey, for future reference, it's not a bad idea to sing songs in keys that are comfortable for the congregation to sing in." And I was like, "Oh, you know what? That actually makes a lot of sense." And just because you want people to feel comfortable and that it's not like showy or whatever. That's the way that I took it. And the bummer to that though was, at least for me, what I ended up doing was my primary concern all the time was um, how to make the congregation feel comfortable. And I don't think that that's a bad thing to keep in mind per se. But what it ended up doing for me vocally is like uh, I have a pretty high range, and what I ended up doing was singing a lot of songs lower, and it just took a lot of the power out of the song, in my opinion. Not like spiritual power, because obviously the lyrics are going to be the same. I'm saying like for me to be able to sing with passion, it was just something that it didn't translate well when we did them in keys that weren't in my wheelhouse. And not necessarily bad advice, but I think the outcome of that wasn't something that really helped me grow as a leader at that time. Fast forward to a few years after that, and the pastor of the now church that my wife and I serve at, um, this was, I think, maybe a couple of years into leading, and he pulled me aside after a service, didn't criticize anything, didn't say anything negative in it anyway, just simply said, um, uh, "Hey, I want you to lead how you would lead. I want you to be yourself. Lead worship like Brendan Miller would lead worship." And you say that, and I even say it now, and I'm like, duh, like it's such a simple thing, but for me it was like, wow, okay. Um, I think there was a little bit maybe of subconsciously feeling like I was dragging my feet in a way of always trying to do what I had been told in the past, and you know, lead for the congregation. Always make sure that the keys of songs are comfortable. Don't do anything crazy musically, because we don't want it to feel like a show, or we don't want it to feel like it's overproduced or whatever. And so from that moment on, I was kind of like, man, I'm going full speed ahead, and I just loved every second of it from that moment on, because I felt free to really lead how I felt called to lead. And how did I feel called to lead? It was I had played in a couple rock bands way back in the day that were mildly successful. We had some releases and played a bunch of shows for a couple years, but I'd always been felt called to lead worship. And as soon as I felt freedom in that to kind of lead worship the way that I wanted to lead, in a way of musically, but also sing in a way that I felt portrayed my passion for lyrics and for the words and for what I'm actually singing. I think of songs like, goodness, like Homecoming by Bethel Corey Asbury. I can't not sing those songs and be emotional. Or another song that we wrote, there's a line in the bridge that I'm telling you, like, I love belting it out because it makes me feel like I could run through a wall, run a marathon. And, that's the kind of stuff for me where I'm like, that helps me be authentic. And as worship leaders, and that's like, as important as I believe humility is, we talked about that in another video. Authenticity as worship leaders, that is almost almost as important, I would say. You got to be able to lead with authenticity. And over the years, did I get it right every time? Leading what I felt called to lead? No, absolutely not. I made mistakes just like everybody else. The difference being though is like, as leaders, we always have to be looking for those opportunities to grow. If we know we made a mistake, do we own that mistake? Do we grow from that mistake? Those are things that, as leaders, that if we're not doing, we need to take a step back and reevaluate and really put things into perspective. And in no way, I'm not saying that there isn't value to making your congregation comfortable, but I think that there's other ways we do that. It's lowering the lights during worship, removing every distraction as much as possible. Because the reality is you're not going to please everybody. And if you've got a team that can lead with passion and authenticity, then that's a hard combo to beat when it really comes to being effective in leading worship and drawing people into God's presence. And I say that all to say that be yourself as a worship leader, simply because God has created all of us uniquely in His image. There's only one Brendan. Thank the Lord. There's only one you. And God has put in each of us uniquely the desire to create whatever that capacity is. For us as musicians, a lot of that is writing songs, but also leading in creative ways. And I'm the only person that can get out to the world what God has put in my heart because I'm uniquely me. The same is true for you. So leading with authenticity, leading with creativity, and really keeping in mind that there's only one of you. So be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else, and honor God in all things. And I am praying for you and your churches this weekend. We know Easter's a busy season, but I just hope this little bit of encouragement is maybe helping spark some things in you for this week. And I hope you have an amazing time celebrating the death and the resurrection of our Savior. God bless.